I'm Lindsay Lewis, editor of Building Enclosure. Thanks for listening along with us today. On December 17th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we have a live webinar airing, Future Ready Design, Navigating the LEED v5 Rating System. Our presenter, Daniel Overbey, Associate Principal and Director of Sustainability for Indianapolis-based Browning Day, and a frequent contributor for Building Enclosure, is here today to discuss the upcoming presentation. Dan, thanks for sitting with me.
Thanks, Lindsay. I'm glad to be here as always.
So to kick off, what is the overall structure of the LEED v5 BDC new construction rating system, and how is it organized? Can you launch into that?
I can launch into that. So for those who maybe are not familiar with what LEED v5 entails, and it's going to be different. We haven't had an entire change to the rating system. I mean, we had the beta 4.1 version out there for a while now, but this sort of wholesale sweeping update of LEED has not happened in about a decade. So there's probably a lot of question marks as to structurally how it might be the same or different. And happy to report the short answer is it's structurally very much the same. It's still 110 points overall. It's still got the same 4 levels of certification: basic, silver, gold, platinum. The thresholds based on the points are the same. Roughly speaking, some of the phrasing has shifted just a little bit, but the credit categories are largely the same. The proportionality of how points are distributed across those categories are largely the same. So it's the same LEED you've always known and loved, just updated to reflect where the market is today.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but LEED v5 is built around 3 primary system goals. So can you identify those goals and explain how building design strategies can support each one?
Yes. LEED v5 across all variations. We're talking building, design, and construction, operation and maintenance, etc. They are harmonized around 3 specific impact areas. The first one is decarbonization. And that's where the rating system is looking to shift projects towards in a more rigorous and robust manner, targeting reductions in operational, embodied, refrigerant-based emissions and transportation-based emissions. In fact, in totality, when you look at the points in the building design and construction rating system, which is what the webinar is focused on and what many of us use when we pursue LEED, it's usually in the building design and construction version of the rating system. That decarbonization piece is close to 70. I think it's around 68 points of that 110. I mean, there's a little bit of wiggle room there because of the innovation category, but quality of life, that's looking at issues like human health and wellness, resilient design, equity. All this is how occupants experience the building, how it works within the context of a community. All this combined, that's about 39 points, give or take. And then the third impact area is ecological conservation and restoration. So that's emphasizing strategies that limit environmental degradation and contribute to restoring ecosystems, which has always been a part of LEED. But a great example, Lindsay, is the decarbonization piece. In LEED version 4, there wasn't really much in there. The decarbonization conversation has really blossomed in the last several years. There, in version 4, you could pursue some credits that got into embodied energy and embodied carbon. This is something that, like in my practice, for instance, we look at on every single project. We've been doing that for years. But what I like about LEED version 5 is having it as an entire impact area. So many of the credits now harmonized around that. It's really in a much more rigorous and robust manner addressing decarbonization at the entire sector, getting into those fugitive refrigerant emissions, looking at site hardscape. I mean, it takes it to another level from what it was in more of these sort of embryonic states in LEED version 4. So decarbonization, quality of life, ecological conservation, and restoration. Those are the 3 impact areas.
Now, you just touched on this briefly, but can you talk more about comparing the old version to the new version? What are some of the most significant changes?
So there's actually in the BE blog several months ago, when the rating system was getting rolled out, I did a deep dive and identified a few things that to me were markedly different than before. And I did mention that resilient design is a more intentional piece of LEED V5. Decarbonization has really expanded the scope in LEED version 5. There are a number of assessments that you will do now in a LEED V5 BD&C project that you weren't prompted to do before. So in LEED version 4, you would do presumably a goal setting kickoff workshop or shred, if you will, and you would look at a simple shoebox model for energy. You would look at some pathways by which you might pursue alternative non-potable water utilization. But with LEED version 5, you're now going to be looking at a climate and resilience assessment. You're going to look at a human impact assessment and a carbon assessment. So this, again, harmonizes around those three impact areas. And teams are going to be prompted now to do a site assessment for the project itself that used to be a standalone optional credit, and looking at embodied carbon, high priority embodied carbon sources at the level of assessment is also there. Now, keep in mind, these are assessments. This is to inject these issue sets into the conversation as you're developing a building project. It's at another level when you get to the point that you're going to act on it and implement strategies. The LEED rating system is designed to prompt teams to do that, but it starts with gathering information, having the conversation. The second thing that I would raise is that building enclosure commissioning is now a part of the prerequisite for energy efficiency, because LEED has long referenced ASHRAE standard 90.1. It does so with LEED version 5 BD&C. It's going to pull in a version of ASHRAE standard 90.1 now that's going to require a basic level of building enclosure commissioning. That's new. That was not the case before. It would prompt you in your owner's project requirements and basis of design to consider envelope requirements, but by referencing a newer edition of ASHRAE standard 90.1, teams are now going to be required to have a basic level of enclosure commissioning, and then through the optional enhanced commissioning credit, you can do more. Another one is there are more pathways through which you can pursue strategies to ensure better indoor air quality. A long-standing strategy within LEED was MERV 8 filters on your air handlers. There are different ways you can approach this, but one compliant path now is to use MERV 13, which is a much heftier filter, and there are some implications. You don't have to use MERV 13. There are other ways you can comply, but that is a very straightforward way you can comply. That's basically nearly medical grade with that MERV 13. Is to try to handle the very, very small microns of particles of like a coronavirus, like very, very small micron levels, and try to have a filter medium that will catch that. And then a lot of at a quick run through the rating system, you'll note that there's a lot of things that aren't apparent in version 5. You might look and wonder, where's my daylight credit? Where's my views credit? Some of these long-standing credits, they've been rolled into what I call, it's not an official term, but I call them these super credits. There are these credits that start to consolidate some of these issue sets and strategies into common credits that have longer, like basically larger point totals. So you can break those out. I'm thinking some of the pilot credits from version 4 or since version 4 launched, a lot of those pilot credits have been migrated over as well. So bird collision deterrence, now embedded in LEED version 5. Design for active occupants, embedded now into LEED version 5. Designing for enhanced resilience, rolled into V5. Even biophilic design aspects, rolled into V5. So those pilot credits that we've been exploring for years, those really do matter. The beta testing our teams do with those pilot credits, it really does matter. There's a whole list. You can see it in that blog post, but they pull into version 5. Also, if you want to pursue platinum, there are now specific requirements you have to achieve. It's not just the 80 points now. You have to do some additional things in order to basically be eligible for LEED Platinum.
Now, expanding on that last question a little bit, how does V5 address emerging sustainability priorities that were less emphasized in V4?
They're now moving to, I think the best way to answer that is I think there's three things I'd point out. One is LEED is recognizing that it's a constant moving target. They realized that 10 years was too long of a development cycle. So they're now committing to a 5-year development cycle, which is out of step with ASHRAE and ICC, which largely commit to a 3-year development cycle. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out in practice. But users of LEED can count on a 5-year development cycle moving forward, which means version 6 should be out on the streets by 2030. The second thing is continuity across the building cycle. And this is what I mean by that is we're trying to align performance indicators and data from the design and construction process to the operations and maintenance and performance modeling. So we're trying to streamline really that pathway through which design and construction leads to operations and maintenance, all through leveraging monitored performance outcomes. And then again, those new requirements for platinum, which I can briefly touch on. One is, so you still have to get 80 points or more, but now under LEED v5, B, and C, you have to achieve certain requirements for electrification. So there's an electrification credit. You're going to look to electrify your buildings, not have any kind of on-site combustion. You're going to have, with some very nuanced specific carve-outs just at a pragmatic level, like emergency power, stuff like that. But basically speaking, electrify the building. Also enhancing energy efficiency beyond certain thresholds, getting that ratcheted up to a pretty rigorous level. Again, I like to point out energy is one of the letters in the acronym. One of the E's stands for energy, so it's that important. Looking at renewable energy, this starts to fit with the White House definition of net zero, by which renewable energy, either through on-site or off-site renewable energy resources, your project is powered one way or another by either allocated renewables or on-site renewables, but that renewable energy credit needs to be achieved at that level, and then reducing embodied carbon at a deeper level than what has been optionally built into the credit in the past. So it's going to be deeper. So that's going to become a lot. That's 80 points plus electrification, plus a deeper level of energy efficiency, a deeper level of embodied carbon reduction, and then really going deep with renewable energy.
Now, previously you mentioned credits or credit categories, so I wanted to go back to that idea. What types maybe do you think have the greatest impact on project design decisions in the V5 version?
Those credit categories, looking at things like ASHRAE, for instance, I always think this is a big one. When every new edition of LEED BD&C will reference a certain level of ASHRAE standard 90.1. So LEED version 5 BD&C is going to reference 90.1 2019 with addendum CR. And that's important too because of some of the updates there. This, however, has a bit of a caveat because it's going to be the 2019 edition of the ASHRAE standard until January 1st of 2028. At that moment, for the next 2 years plus of using LEED v5. So at January 1st, 2028 and beyond, you'll actually go with LEED or with ASHRAE standard 90.1 2022 edition. So I feel like I did a little bit of a word salad there. If you do LEED version 5 right now, you're going to use 90.1 2019. At and beyond January 1st of 2028, you're going to use 90.1 2022. Also looking at life cycle carbon and all the different ways, pulling in site hardscape, looking at refrigerants. I feel like all of that is significant. And then best to do your integrative process goal setting workshop and invest in several cycles of energy modeling and embodied carbon modeling. That's going to also put your teams in a position of success. So look at those assessments early and often, have iterative checkpoints on the key indicators that you need for LEED, whether it's energy, whether it's carbon, et cetera, and then acknowledging that you may be latching onto a newer edition of 90.1 that's going to have certain implications, such as building enclosure commissioning.
Now, I'm not sure if you'll be doing this in the live presentation or not, but can you walk us through a hypothetical project and describe how you would apply V5, the BDC rating system, to guide design and construction?
Yes, we won't get into this very deeply in the webinar unless a specific question comes up, but the process by which you go through getting a project designed and certified remains much the same. You and some of this is so for me, my suggestion to anybody is have a team-wide kickoff, a goal setting workshop, if you will. The more stakeholders at the table, the better. The more disciplines to the table, the better. Look for those synergies, look for those hidden opportunities. Everybody who's got a voice at that table, they're going to have a different perspective. You're going to discover some things and set that sustainability objective and that lead strategy from the project kickoff. At that point, if you're the project team, seek permission from the owner to register the project in LEED Online, which is actually going to be ARC moving forward, and an updated version of ARC. So it's still an online platform. They're just rolling it all together into a more comprehensive online resource. So register your project, then have regular touch points. Depends on your project schedule. I've always found a pretty reasonable cadence is every 2 to 4 weeks, depending on schedule, and use the scorecard checklist, if you will, as a conversation piece because it's going to shift and change. Get into specific credits, see how things move. What's great about LEED is it's going to address sustainability objectives in a comprehensive manner and keep your team from, due to the voices at the table, having any very apparent blind spots. You're going to have a certain level of intentionality across a wide range of issue sets as it relates to sustainability. And you go through, you document those credits, and you can either do a combined review at the very end after everything's been commissioned and the building's occupied. You can review everything in one shot, but my recommendation is do a split review. As you move from design to construction, submit those design credits. It's kind of like a progress report. Find out from GBCI how you're doing with those design credits. Get those locked in, and then shift your attention towards those construction credits. Work on that. Certification will come after building is tested and balanced, commissioning's done, and you're occupied.
Now, how might the changes from V4 to V5 affect project teams?
I got my LEED AP, Lindsay, back in 2006. I've seen a lot of LEED over those years. A lot of changes since the 2.2 days, I think it was, maybe in 2.1. It always feels like at first it's going to feel like a lot. The change, and it seems like the scope, the purview of it expands, takes on more issue sets. It's going to feel like a lot because it's different. I think in some ways LEED V5 is more accessible than version 4. Some of it is more rigorous. I mean, 90.1 2019 is a big deal if you've been used to 2010, or if you're in a jurisdiction where your energy code's based on the 2007 version of ASHRAE 90.1. That's going to be a significant piece in the cost model when you're working on this project. But on balance, I do not yet anticipate it being more difficult or markedly easier. I think once we get through the sort of the first wave of adapting to the change, it's going to feel very much like LEED projects of recent past.
Now, lastly, I do want to ask, what else will you be going over during the webinar?
We're essentially, I've been in a lot of webinars and conference presentations about LEED V5, and I felt like the presentations are always high level. These are the 3 impact areas. This is how the points are distributed, and these are the reasons why LEED's changing. But I felt like I was always coming away lacking a breakdown of the credits and what is really inside V5 BD&C. So what I fashioned here for this webinar, and thanks Lindsay for the platform to be able to share, I tried to make that webinar that I wanted that I couldn't find. I wanted to make a webinar that's going to be essentially a speed run through the entire rating system. And if I wouldn't recommend, with the cadence of my voice, wouldn't recommend listening to Dan at 1.5 speed later on. So tune in live and hear me at my normal speed. But I'm going to give you a breakdown, credit by credit. I want you to come away after 1 hour with enough knowledge to what's under the hood of BD&C V5 that you can carry on a conversation with your team, with your clients, that you understand at a basic level what is inside LEED version 5 BD&C at a credit by credit level. And I'm pointing out along the way some of the specific differences that I'm seeing so that you can come away more informed. And so it's kind of a crash course or a speed run, if you will. So welcome anybody who wants to be a part of that. And it'll be happening here soon in December.
Well, thank you again, Dan, for your time today.
Lindsay, you're always welcome. Thank you.